mix it into the cup, right away.
I see.
But, he needed an introduction to a more day-to-day kind of coffee. Not a peak experience, just like yeah. Right. Oh, you're in your office, Ian.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Good.
Okay, looks like we are about to start.
Yeah, I think we'll wait till the hour. So I guess panelists are already here, right? Yeah, I see lots of people. Hi, everybody. I think you might as well turn on your cameras unless there's some problem with that, but I'm sure Rinpoche will enjoy the experience of speaking to live people, live Zoom boxes, that is. Okay, we'll wait just one more minute. Okay, so maybe I guess we should begin. Hello, everyone. I'm Evyatar Shulman from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Very happy to welcome everybody to this exciting event, this talk by Rinpoche, Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche. About the Heart Sutra. And just before there's panelists here, mainly from the Israeli Sangha or the university who had the opportunity to register for the event. But there are actually supposed to be thousands of people worldwide attending the event. And there's a team of translators at work right now. And so we're just going to take a moment first to synchronize all these technical issues. So please, Michael from the Khyentse Foundation, who's capably running the show, please do your thing.
Thank you, Professor Schulman. Welcome, everyone. Interpretation will be available in just a moment. You'll be able to click on the globe icon on the bottom of the screen and choose the language you would like to listen to. I'd like to request that each interpreter repeat this instruction for their respective audiences. Akiko?
皆さんこんばんは。ようこそおいでくださいました。通訳機能について、お知らせいたします。まもなくZoom 画面の右下に通訳機能のアイコンが出ますので、それが出ましたら、クリックをしてご希望の言語を選んでください。
Thank you, Bella.
大家好，稍后我们即将开放翻译室，所以会有一个地球图标在荧幕下方，请到时候点选选取中文即可，谢谢。
Thank you, Maria.
Дорогие друзья, сегодняшняя лекция будет сопровождаться синхронным переводом на русский язык. Переводческая комната будет открыта совсем скоро. Чтобы попасть в нее, пожалуйста, нажмите на иконку с изображением земного шара и выберите русский язык.
Thank you, Olivia.
Une traduction est assurée dans différentes langues et vous pourrez y accéder dans quelques secondes en cliquant sur le globe qui est en bas à droite de votre écran et vous pouvez choisir la langue de votre choix.
Thank you, Sara.
Hola a todos. Hay interpretación simultánea en varios idiomas vía Zoom. Para activar dichas interpretaciones, por favor, pulsen el icono del globo terráqueo que hay debajo, llamado interpretación de idiomas, y selecciona el idioma que necesites.
Thank you. Sonam?
정말 되시길래 rinpoche 송슈디 된다. 계주리요 비민된 소소 강대대 계획 돌았다. 샴기 딱이 돌 딱리 돌 에브로나 네케 강대대 돌 냐요래.
Thanks. Luciano?
Boa tarde a todos. Nós vamos começar em breve. As traduções em diversas línguas vão estar disponíveis. Assim que o ícone com um globo na base da tela do seu computador aparecer, você pode clicar nesse ícone e escolher a língua de sua preferência.
Thank you. I'm starting interpretation now, so the globe icon should appear momentarily. Interpreters, please remember to record. Back to you, Professor Schulman.
Thanks so much. I must say that was quite moving to feel this global presence. So it's a great privilege and honor for me to introduce Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, one of the leading Buddhist teachers alive today. You'll have to bear with me though for a few minutes first while I do my introduction and explain what we're up to before you get to hear Rinpoche himself. So I'm sure most of you in attendance, for most of you, Rinpoche doesn't need much introduction, being such a prominent voice of deep insight within the Buddhist world. But it's nevertheless good to recall that we will soon have the opportunity to listen to the wisdom of a remarkable Buddhist master, wisdom that has matured through many years of cultivation, learning and practice, and who is still active in many influential spheres of Buddhist life. Rinpoche is considered an incarnation of another great Lama. I'll spare you the names. He was recognized as a lineage holder of the 19th century, of a very well-known and renowned 19th century Tibetan treasure revealer, and sent for rigorous philosophical and ritualistic training at the Palace Monastery in Sikkim, where he studied with some of the greatest Tibetan Buddhist masters of our time. Given that we're in an academic setting, I'd also mention that Rinpoche studied at SOAS, one of the main centers for the study of Indology and Buddhism in the academic world. The School for Oriental and African Studies, which is part of the University of London. Here in such an event that we're bridging the gap, I'd say, in some way between academia and the world of Buddhist practice. So it's interesting to see that kind of study in Rinpoche's CV, if we could call it. The amount of activities Rinpoche oversees is rather astounding. While he runs numerous monasteries and is responsible for literally thousands of monks. He's also founded Dharma centers all over the world and initiated an immensely valuable translation project for Buddhist texts, which I'm sure many are familiar with. On top of all this, he's a prolific author, a highly respected and talented director and film producer. If anybody's worried he's going to hear anything too conventional today, so I guess the titles of his books, some of his books would suggest otherwise. The Guru Drinks Bourbon, or What Makes You Not a Buddhist. It's not what we would expect to hear from a kind of, I don't know, normative teacher of Buddhism. Of particular interest to us today is Rinpoche's interest in the study of Buddhism in academia, and especially the partnership that Khyentse Foundation has established with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where I work. Today, in fact, is an opportunity not only to hear Rinpoche speak, but also to celebrate the great contribution that he and his foundation have made to the study of Buddhist traditions at Hebrew University, and thereby in Israel more broadly. The Khyentse Foundation collaborates with approximately 35 universities around the globe, many of them leading centers for the study of Buddhism. They offer support for programs, found and finance centers, and most excitingly, create new positions in Buddhist studies to help sustain this legacy for future generations of scholars. Following Rinpoche and of the executive director of the Khyentse Foundation, Mrs. Kanjoli Che, in June 2018, an event we all remember very well. We pursued a path of collaboration between Khyentse Foundation and Hebrew University, which led to the establishment of a new permanent position in Buddhist studies. This is the first of its sort in Israel. This is a great moment for the study of Buddhism in Israel, which has given an incredible boost to our program. After an intense search process last spring, we decided to hire Dr. Ian McCormick, who completed his PhD at Harvard and who was at the time a postdoctoral scholar in Berkeley, where Khyentse founded actually their first permanent position, first chair in Buddhist studies. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Rinpoche personally and all the people involved in the foundation who helped this dream become a reality. I'm also happy to introduce Dr. McCormick for the world to have a quick glance at him and to ask him to say a few words about himself and his interest in Tibetan Buddhism. So please, Ian, Dr. McCormick.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Eviatar, for that introduction. And I'd like to extend my thanks, of course, to the Khyentse Foundation and just echo the sentiment that you've expressed, that it really is a privilege to be here today in this community of scholars and practitioners of Tibetan Buddhism. For me personally, also a privilege to be able to join Eviatar and my other esteemed colleagues of religion and Asian studies here at Hebrew University. So I've been asked to just speak very briefly about how I came to be here. And perhaps like many of you, I do find it hard to pin down exactly where my interest comes from and how to answer that question. So I'll just say that I've been studying Tibetan literature and history and religion since I was in college, which very shockingly to me now I realize is almost 2 decades. My main area of academic research is on Buddhism and politics and exploring how each has shaped the other in Tibetan history, especially in the era of the 5th Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan State. And I also teach courses across a range of topics in Tibetan religion and social and political history, and more broadly on topics in Buddhism and Buddhist thought and practice. So I'll just end here, and I'd like to reiterate again that it's very humbling and very exciting to be able to join this community here and be a part of this legacy of Buddhist studies, and to be given this opportunity to continue to do what I love. So thank you, and back to you.
Thank you, Ian. And it is a real pleasure to have you with us. So we're gathered here today to have Rinpoche inaugurate our new outreach series on what we call Buddhism in academia, which is intended mainly for the local public in Israel. And it's designed to introduce to the wider public insights into Buddhist thought, history, literature, practice, which are obtained through academic research. The talks will be held by international guests, by scholars at the university, by some of our advanced students, and we plan 3 to 4 talks every year. This year we'll have only 2 just because we started a bit late. Year, I mean academic year. The next talk will be given by Maria Heim from Amherst College about the Milinda Panya, the questions of King Milinda, after a new translation she's produced, which is apparently will be the definite translation for quite a while. So given that this series emerges from the vision shared by Khyentse Foundation and the Hebrew University, which cherishes the continuity between academic and experiential perspectives in the study of Buddhism, and given Rinpoche's personal interest in strengthening the research and teaching of Buddhism and leading universities around the globe, including the support that the foundation has offered and continues to offer to the Hebrew University, I felt it would be appropriate to invite him to inaugurate the series. Rinpoche has kindly agreed, and maybe we'll hear a little bit more from him about this connection that he sees also between academia and Buddhism. Maybe not. I don't know what he's planning. But for anyone who has grown to appreciate the analytical precision of Buddhism, and all of us have learned to count pretty well through Buddhism, the 4 this or that, or the 12, or the 50 some this or that, or 80 some. How was it? 89 states of consciousness in the Abhidhamma Sangha. Or 121, depends how you count them. So the connection between Buddhism and academia should come as no surprise. I'll end with one last note. It was not for no reason that I suggested that Rinpoche speak about the Diamond Sūtra today. Rinpoche, you probably recall reciting this text in your visit to the Wailing Wall 4 years ago. A very special, moving moment, an act that proved in many ways to be prophetic. And I hope we'll learn today more about the potentials and the insights you find hidden in this text, which led you to recite it that very day. And let me also express our hope that the next time we get to meet and hold such an event and introduce you, it will be a full embodied event where we'll all, and you'll be present in full body, speech, and mind. I wish to thank all the people who helped this event happen. Before we start, including everyone from Siddhartha's Intent, Khyentse Foundation, and our student Noam Shani, who helped us put this event together. I also want to say just a word about the format so that there'll be no surprises. Rinpoche will speak for about 45 minutes to an hour, after which there'll be time for questions. Only people from the Israeli from the Israeli public who registered in advance will be able to present questions. This is kind of what emerged from the format, which is like, we're very happy, of course, to have so many international guests, and we really give you a very warm welcome. But we did want to give the Israeli public an opportunity to benefit as much as they can from this event, and they'll be able to ask questions. We'll be monitoring that afterwards, and I'll explain in a second how that goes. So once again, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. And please, Rinpoche, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much, Professor Schumann, for your very generous introduction. I'm very honored for being asked to do this, especially by the university. I have a very fond memory of being there. Now, I will be attempting to introduce this sutra. I will definitely, I dare not I dare not say that this will be a teaching on the Vajracchedika Sutra. As I'm sure many of you know, I am a struggling practitioner trying to practice. So my introduction of this sutra probably will come from the point of view of a practitioner. What I'm trying to say is many of the academic students here tonight probably might not get fully satisfied. But nevertheless, also for the academic students, this may be a good angle to make note that how the traditional or practitioner Buddhist read these texts. This sutra is one of the most important sutra in the Mahayana teachings. For those who are not familiar with Buddhism in general, I guess I need to explain this a little bit. There are what we call yanas, different yanas. Now somehow these yanas have ended up by sort of the majority of the people, they refer the yanas as some sort of a school or a tradition. I mean, one could say this, but yanas are much more than that. Actually, it is not really intended to be like a school or a tradition. Buddha himself, in one of the Mahayana Sutra, said that those who label so and so teachings as a Mahayana teachings, as a Pratyekayana teachings, as a Charvakayana teachings, they are making mistakes. They are making a grave sort of mistakes. This is what Buddha said. To give you one example, probably the most popular, most understandable, most relatable teaching that Buddha gave is teachings on anicca, which is teachings on impermanence. Because the subject of impermanence is something that is quite obvious, so to speak. One does not require in-depth analysis or logic to establish this. It is very, tangible or understandable. Then came the teaching of dukkha, where Buddha said everything, every single phenomena, or actually no phenomena, but a single phenomena give you the full satisfaction. Everything basically has this sort of the character of unsatisfactoriness, so to speak. Now, this is in a way much more deeper level of teaching. This one requires thinking. Ordinary people will not be able to accept that right away, because there are a lot of things that sort of satisfies you, if you don't really contemplate. The next teaching, which is what we call anatta, selflessness. Now, this teaching is much more sophisticated, if you like. It requires much more analysis. It needs much more contemplation. So as you can see, even within these three, there are sort of three sort of, the first one is much more chewable, if you like, much more digestible. The second one, less. And then the third one, much less. I'm telling you this as an example. Vajracchedika Sutra is categorized as a Mahayana Sutra. Now, the Mahayana, the Maha in Indian language, Sanskrit language, it is something to do with the great, big, grand. Now, Maha, even though it has that sound like grand, big, it's really not so much to do with the hierarchy. As I was speaking earlier, it is, this teaching really is for much more exceptional and exclusive students, so to speak. Because in order to really listen to the Mahayana teaching, one needs a different way of listening, different set of mind stream, or basically in the layman's language, you need to be really open-minded. I was recently saying that basically Mahayana is a vehicle that really teaches us how to think out of box, if you like. See, not everybody can think out of box. So I just want to tell you this because this Vajracchedika Sutra is what we call, it belongs to Mahayana category. So it became very popular in the more Mahayana dominating societies such as China, such as Japan, and of course Tibet, so on and so forth. In fact, I believe that Vajracchedika Sutra, this sutra, is probably the first wood block printed material in the world. This is something that maybe we can find out. Now, even within the Mahayana teachings, there are teachings that are more popular, again, digestible, more acceptable, closer to how the human habitual pattern works. So sometimes in the Buddhist study, we call these teachings of expedient meaning. There you will find, teachings such as, impermanence, anicca, dukkha, love and compassion, karma, like bad karma, good karma. These teachings are what we call expedient teaching. And to put it very crudely, the Buddha's teaching we call expedient teachings are his teaching that he did not really meant it wholeheartedly, so to speak. He was sort of saying this. He taught this in order to lure the audience to the higher and the deeper and more, more truer, so to speak. So lots and lots of Buddhist teachings belong to this category, expedient. It's not something that Buddha really meant it. He did not really do it. When he said this, he did not really meant it. Yeah, he has another agenda. When he spoke those, he had a hidden meaning. He was planning, if you like, he was plotting. You can even think it's like almost like a, scheme, like he was teaching this set of teachings to rescue or protect or divert the listeners from immediate wrong views, therefore immediate pain and entanglement and emotions and so on and so forth. Now, there are other teachings, we call them direct teachings. It's what he meant, and it did not require any interpretation. What he taught, what he said is what it is. These teachings, like definite meaning, no interpretation necessary, is what I'm trying to introduce you today. I mean, one of these teaching, Vajracchedika Sutra belongs to this kind of teaching, the teaching that does not require interpretation. What he said is what it is. There's no hidden agenda, so to speak. No extra interpretation is required. So Vajracchedika Sutra, therefore, is considered important in the Mahayana, because this is like the ultimate, or what Buddha really wanted to say. Okay, now the title of this sutra, within the sutra itself, sutra basically came about as a conversation between Buddha's one of the main disciples, Subhuti, and Buddha himself. And Subhuti asked Buddha, what should we call? What is the title of this teaching? And inside the teaching, inside the sutra, Buddha referred this teaching as the teaching of the Prajnaparamita. Now, I think the Prajnaparamita is really difficult to interpret. I'm sure many of the translators here will agree with me. It's probably one of the most difficult to interpret. Just for the sake of, since this is the quintessence, just for the sake of, what do you call it, discussion, let me try to interpret the word Prajnaparamita. Now, Prajna, I think a lot of people translate this as wisdom, but the common understanding of the wisdom as it is defined in many of the English dictionary may not really do the justice here. Because I think when we talk about wisdom, many times it seems to be talking about very high intellect, sophisticated mind, sort of a product of highly educated, highly trained mind, so on and so forth. If you are thinking of wisdom in this context, the prajna is not at all wisdom. So what is wisdom here? Of course, this is the main subject. I mean, this is the sort of the main subject of the sutra, right? So prajna is I mean, if we must categorize prajna between subject and object, you can categorize this as a subject. It is some sort of a cognizance. So if you insist what is the object of this prajna, then I guess one could say that the object of the prajna is the shunyata, emptiness. So the wisdom or the prajna we are talking here is actually in a very crude way, okay? It's really not a good way of interpreting, but we don't have a choice. So it is the mind that knows emptiness, shunyata, which is the ultimate truth of all phenomena. Okay. Now, the title of this book is not just Prajna. There's another one, which is even more complicated, which is Paramita. So here, already when we talk about Prajna, we are not talking about a mind that is a subjective and objective. We are talking about non-dual mind. Okay, we can maybe discuss this later if we have time, but this is really very difficult to just come to a conclusion within a short time. This mind or this cognizance is what a follower of the Buddha is trying to establish or trying to discover or trying to, what do you call it, strengthen, however you want to put it. Now, the second portion of the word paramita actually is saying something even more extraordinary. Because what paramita actually means gone sort of transcending, going beyond, even going beyond the even going beyond the highest wisdom or the non-dual mind. Now this then translates quite well with the common name of the sutra, which is Vajracchedika Sutra. So Vajra is a Sanskrit name for this. Well, many people think it's like a thunderbolt or some sort of it's an instrument that is held by a god, king of heaven, or god king Indra, Anyway, supposedly this weapon can destroy everything, but nothing can destroy this weapon. So this is why it's called Vajra, indestructible, indestructible, or even more precisely, cannot be divided, cannot be separated, cannot be measured, cannot be quantified, cannot kind of no direction. You cannot split, basically. So that is the Vajra. But Chedika, Vajracchedika means even Dorje Che in Tibetan, even this Vajra gets cut, smashed. Sort of the cutter of even this uncuttable, undestroyable weapon called Vajra. Okay, so what are we talking here? Basically, we are talking about the ultimate truth. As I said earlier, this is a sutra that is not going, the subject of this sutra is direct teaching. So, throughout the sutra, you will find lot of example, or example is maybe not the right word. Throughout the sutra, you will find a lot of discussion between Subhuti and Buddha regarding this force that actually can even cut the Vajra. Okay, so let me just give you a few, let me just extract few of the discussion. Now, this is quite interesting, actually. When the sutra, there's a setting of the sutra, and the setting of the sutra is, of course, the traditionally, all that, thus have I heard, all that. But, Buddha was at the Sharavasti, and he just went to Sharavasti town for collecting alms, and then he came back, he ate his lunch. After the lunch, he placed his begging bowl and his dharma robe properly, and then he washed his feet, and then he sat straight. And then his followers paid homage and offered prostration. And within these followers, Subhuti began to ask the questions. Well, he begins with expressing how he was amazed by the attention and how the Tathagatas, the Buddhas, they favor the Bodhisattvas. And then he asked Buddha, how should one enter to this great Bodhisattva path? Okay, so of course, since we don't have the time to go through all the texts. I will just choose few. Okay, so as an answer to this question, the first answer Buddha gave was this: Bodhisattvas, those who wish to liberate sentient beings, all sentient beings of all kind, those who are born from the womb, those who are born as from the egg, basically all sentient beings. A bodhisattva must have the wish to enlighten, liberate all these sentient beings. Now, this is a standard Mahayana teachings, of course. But then, right after that, he said, that are sentient semebo yongsu nyangene dejang sentient kanyang yongsu nyangene deperjuro medo yamdu semje varchao. Now, this is what makes Vajracchedika Sutra what I call direct teaching. Because after he said, a bodhisattva should have this motivation to liberate all sentient beings. That's how the bodhisattva should begin his activity. But right after that, Buddha said, but bodhisattva must know and must generate this determination that there is no sentient beings that got liberated. You see? Because if a bodhisattva think that there is a sentient being that requires liberation, then the bodhisattva is creating a concept called a sentient being. Moreover, if the bodhisattva think that there is something called a liberation, an aim, an object, a final sort of a destination, the bodhisattva has a dualistic conception. This kind of dualistic distinctions that so and so are sentient beings, this is a liberation. I shall therefore liberate all the sentient beings, these ignorant beings too, this liberation. These are all dualistic thoughts. This is how a bodhisattva should this kind of mind stream is something that the bodhisattva should always avoid. This is what Buddha said. So as you can see, we are talking about really the highest level of the Mahayana subject. And what I just gave you, what I just extracted, in fact, is the quintessential teaching of the Mahayana's quintessential teaching of what we call Karuna, Mahakaruna. Well, I guess in English, we translate this as a compassion. But as you can see, the real compassion must be, real compassion must transcend the idea of an object of a compassion, an ignorant sentient being, and the compassionate person, the bodhisattva. So this is what perhaps one could say that this is perhaps what makes Buddhist compassion, or especially Mahayana's compassion, very, very unique. I will now, of course, skip, since we don't have enough time to go through. And also, I have to say, in Buddhist study, we believe that only a realized being can make a commentary on sutras that are taught by the Buddha himself. If you are an ordinary person, it is impossible to really comprehend the Buddha's teaching. So this is why in the Buddhist study, we have something called a Shastra, which is actually commentary to the Buddha's teachings, written by great people like Nagarjuna, Asanga, Maitreya, Vasubandhu, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of commentary texts, such as Madhyamika Mulakarika, Madhyamika Avatara. These teachings, these commentaries, written by Nagarjuna or written by Asanga, they clarify, they sort of open make it easy to understand, so to speak, easier to understand these teachings. So those who wish to really understand such a sutra like Vajracchedika Sutra or Hatha Sutra or any other Prajnaparamita sutras, they should read. I would suggest you to read Nagarjuna or any of these great commentators from Nalanda or Vikramalashila or Otantapuri's masters. Or also, later many commentaries are also written by the great Tibetan masters, and I believe that there are also commentaries written by other Buddhist traditions, such as I recently read sixth great Zen master, Master Huining's Platform Sutra, which is, I would personally say, is like one of the most wonderful commentary to teachings such as the Vajracchedika Sutra that we are discussing. Anyway, just to go through, extract some of these texts a little bit more. Another one. This time, Buddha asked Subhuti, Ramjur, di chinyam to sem, sen pyunsum sok with the para tawar cha nyam mam, Ramjur ji solpa. This is what Buddha asked Subhuti. Subhuti, how should one look at the Buddha? Should one look at the Buddha with all the great, beautiful qualities such as, 32 major marks, 80 minor marks, this golden color, all these basically beautiful attributes? Should one look at the Buddha like that? Subhuti said, no. One should never look at the Buddha adorned with a beautiful marks and major and minor marks. Because when Buddha said, Buddha is a perfect being, remember again the word paramita. Sometimes we use the word perfection or wisdom, right? Likewise, when we talk about perfect being, we are not talking about perfectly beautiful, as in dualistic distinctions of beauty. So this is a, furthermore, it says actually, if you hear that somebody says Ramjur jisam to ten person sokon disam to dunno, like if someone says, or if you hear Buddha is beautiful, Buddha is adorned with amazing qualities, these are all dunno, means lies. Because Buddha Tathagata has to transcend dualistic ideas such as beautiful marks. This is another one. But then, this is having discussed these shunyata, like all the talks about transcending, all the talks about perfection, then one may think, okay, maybe nothing exists, as in, like negation. This is not so. And I think this is really one of the most important, what do you call it? This is one of the most important point for a student who are studying Mahayana, especially Mahayana texts. They need to know this. Even in the Hat Sutra, when Buddha taught the shunyata, he taught the shunyata with sort of 4 categories or definitions, so to speak. For instance, he could have just said form is emptiness, but he did not stop there. He immediately said emptiness is form. There he could have stopped, but no. He went on saying 2 more things, right? So when we talk about Buddha has no, like beautiful marks, Buddha has never taught. When a bodhisattva practice, if a bodhisattva think that there is a sentient being, when a bodhisattva practice Mahakaruna, compassion, if the bodhisattva think that there is a sentient being over there, and that there's an enlightenment up there to which a bodhisattva will, place this ignorant sentient being towards, all these are wrong views. So when you hear this, it is possible that people can think this is all a sort of negation, because it sounds like a negation, right? It sort of what do you call it? Deductive, so to speak. So this is right in the middle of the sutra. Subhuti raised this question. Sort of a doubt. Subhuti said, in the future, in the degenerated time, when all the teachings of the Buddha begin to degenerate, is it even possible that sentient beings, human beings, will have an inclination towards such teachings? There, Buddha gave a different kinds of answer. Buddha said, Subhuti, don't never say like this. In the degenerated time, when most of the Buddha's teachings are degenerated, there will be bodhisattva who are disciplined, who are adorned with all kinds of enlightened qualities, those who have wisdom, those who have a courage. They will teach these teachings. And if you pay service to these bodhisattvas, if you pay homage to these bodhisattvas, Buddha said, it is far more, it has far more merit than of making offerings and service and homage to hundreds and hundreds of Buddhas. So this is said again right in the middle of the sutra, almost the opposite of what we just heard. Then again, the sutra goes back to the ultimate teachings of the Shunyata again. It basically it goes on covering how no dualistic distinctions or no dualistic phenomena truly exist. So this goes on, and I like to conclude. I think the conclusion that is like a really quite a famous shloka. Stanza. Karma rabrib mar actually, this is the last stanza of the Vajracchedika Sutra. Basically, what the quintessence of this teaching is that everything should be, all phenomena should be looked at, interact with, enjoy, or live with, like a shooting star, lamp, illusion, dewdrop, bubble, dream, lightning, cloud. What does he mean by that? Basically, like a dream. You cannot really say it does not exist. In the dream, things have some sort of order. Like if you're drinking a cup of tea in the dream, the cup in the dream manages to hold the tea. But that does not mean that the dream cup has suddenly become a real cup. This is how we must look at all phenomena as it's there, but it's not there. Appearance and emptiness simultaneously. It's not as if the emptiness came first and then it became an appearance, or vice versa. Basically, all phenomena are like basically like a paradox. It's there, but it's not there. So this is basically the quintessence of the Vajracchedika Sutra. Now, of course, as we go through this, one may almost feel what is the relevance of these teachings in today's world. And actually, it's not just today's world or ancient world. As long as there is dualistic distinctions, there is always going to be a struggle. As long as there is a dualistic distinctions that which you will cling on, there will always be war. There will always be dispute. Not just outer dispute, but internally. So this applies to everything. Understanding the Vajracchedika Sutra, even on the most surface level, could really alter where we live, where we have a relationship with others, where we build a house, where we plan our life. Understanding of the Vajracchedika Sutra may even help the way we plan our education for not just our kids, for a nation. Because otherwise, if we don't have this, let's use the word wisdom, Prajna. If we don't have this Prajna or the wisdom of non-duality, then all other activities such as morality, such as generosity, ethics, they all breeds extremism. They will always create problem. Actually, they are the real problem. They really, they are the sort of the main cause. And this is true. If you look at our world, most of the struggle is because you believe in something right or wrong, big or small, black or white, so on and so forth. So Vajracchedika Sutra, if you were to ask me whether this is relevant, it is definitely relevant. It's not as if it's more relevant today than before. As long as you see a flaw in dualistic mind, then you need to really counter that dualistic thoughts and patterns with a non-dualistic view. Now, is it possible though? Is it possible to actually establish this within our mind stream? Yes, very much so. Because for instance, we already do have some limited, mediocre, non-dualistic attitude towards a few things, such as, I always say this, like reflection of your face in the mirror. You look at the mirror, you see your face, and you use for whatever you are using it for, like combing hair or applying lipsticks, but you don't also think that there is a face inside. What it does is it liberates you from thinking that there's another being there. And this is a small, mediocre, but we could do that with everything, with all the values that we human beings have, such as money, such as, I don't know, economy, such as political value, I don't know, whatever we are struggling with. So I think this is a little bit more than 45 minutes. Since this is such a difficult subject, I can only summarize this way. Probably we could do a little bit better by, I don't know, raising some questions. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'll try.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche, for this profound instruction. I think I'll take the liberty and ask a question myself first, just to get you to speak a little bit more about the text, and just to say to anyone, and at least in the introduction, in the invitation that we sent from the university, there's a link to the translation of the text. And I think one of the things that Rinpoche is suggesting here is that the text is worth reading and reflecting upon, and they're easily found on the internet. And especially you can look out for the translations by Paul Harrison, different translation, who's the real academic authority on the Vajracchedika, and not that far away will maybe have as close as he could get to a kind of original version, whatever that means. I want to ask you, Rinpoche, if you're willing, there's one passage I find it exceptionally intriguing in the Vajracchedika about dana, about giving. And the Buddha explains to Subhuti that one should give without relying on anything. For example, not relying on any of the sense objects, on the rupa, on the eye, on the forms, on the sounds, on the smells, the taste, the touch, the mind, the dharmas, the mental objects. So that, I guess, I mean, you know, the kind of negative form is emptiness way is always easier than the kind of positive, because then he says something that's even more perplexing, which is whoever will give in that way without relying on anything will get an infinite amount of merit. So I don't know, that seems to me even, I don't know, swirling around beyond dualism and non-dualism, but maybe that if you want to explain that to a simple-minded person like myself, maybe we'll get a little more.
This is a classic questions, and this is a classic challenge that we always face when we study Mahayana, Madhyamika. We always do this. Okay. It's like this. Mahayana people think like this. Mahayana people think that because everything is shunyata, therefore you can actually do anything, everything. It is sort of a very twisted way of thinking, isn't it? If everything is not shunyata, then you can only do that thing. Okay, so to give you an example, I'm looking at the glass of water here, like this, and according to the Mahayana people, this is what they will say. The idea of water is my own idea, my own projection, because I'm a human at the moment. This is the karmic condition. I've been educated to think that this is a water. But someone else, like a fish or some other insects, will think this is something else. But water, okay, fish may think this is their home. None of this exists truly. And this shunyata is so important. Otherwise, let's say this is only water. Then all the fish and all the other projections have no, they just cannot function. this is how we also, this is also the whole idea of good karma and bad karma has to fit it like that. So how should I put it? Even the accumulation of merit. Okay, giving dana, giving okay, let's say a kilo of grape. If we say that only giving a kilo of grape is perfection of generosity, then we will have a big problem. You know, so this has a lot of angle, because you see, who knows, maybe the very grape that you give to somebody may even make somebody sick. So on and so forth, right? I hope I answered your question.
At least partially, I think you did. Thanks. Anybody who wants to ask a question, just raise your hand. With the there's the button on the screen, and I'll be moderating this. So please, Eyal, you can go first and present your question to Rinpoche. Just remember to unmute your mute button.
Hey, Rinpoche. Such an honor to see you. We met in Bodh Gaya 3 years ago, and I'm Patrick's friend. So it's good to see you again. I'm asking for my friends and I who decided to live in Jerusalem, which is, as you may know, is a city full of conflicts and kind of like challenges. And sometimes for me, it seems that in order to keep developing in the Buddhist view, you need to kind of create a bubble where you do your yoga, you practice you study the scriptures, and kind of like disconnect or stay away from the atmosphere, from the challenges. And I wonder what you think about it, and if there is any action we as people who live in such places do.
I think that's creating cause and condition, which is very important. You have to, because we are, after all, sentient being, still not fully, okay, we may have read Vajracchedika Sutra, we may have read Sutra, but all is on an intellectual level, vague understanding. Our understanding of the Shunyata is still not penetrating our very solid clinging towards dualistic world, which means that we are still a subject to all the cause and conditions. So since we are creature of cause and condition, we might as well create right cause and condition. And when I say right cause and condition, this is where we talk about the motivation. So yoga, I don't know, aromatherapy, I don't know, like soft music, all this creation of atmosphere, but with a motivation that through this, may I be able to decipher the meaning of Vajracchedika Sutra. If you have that kind of motivation, actually, this is also in the Sutra, because the Sutra is quite vast, I couldn't cover everything. This is also called right path. That's what you are supposed to do. Yes, okay.
Yeah, Shaked, please go ahead.
So thank you very, very much from all my heart. And my question is there some sort of basis or foundation which is good to have before trying to comprehend this teaching, in order for our efforts not to be a hindrance, because we don't have the proper causes and conditions, like you just said. Thank you.
Wow, these are very important questions. Well, ideally, maybe it's good to study their Buddhist schools. I don't know how much is available, especially how much is available in translated version. It may be good to study like Vajracchedika or Sautrantika Buddhist. They are very sharp. Usually, I'm talking about the Buddhist study of epistemology or Buddhist study of metaphysics. They're very, very sharp. They deconstruct the whole notion of creator. And then they all basically distill all the way to, like something so small like an atom, and then cognizance. And that may be quite, it may be quite good for academics, especially those who have an inclination with the science and all that. You might enjoy this. And then there's a school of Buddhism called Chittamata school, who believes that there's only mind, nothing exists, only mind exists. They're very sharp. These guys are really, really big logicians. And no God, no atom, there's no such thing as time, there's no such thing as a space. There's only thing that there is cognizance, mind. Then maybe you should bring guys like Nagarjuna, who will even deconstruct this mind. So if you developing this kind of base, probably will be good thing if we are talking about academic studies, right? But if you are talking about practice, if you are talking about a practice, I need to surprise you. Something, a statement by great scholar called Chandrakirti. When okay, so let's say if we ask Chandrakirti, to whom we should teach Vajracchedika Sutra, something like this sutra. I mean, he was a scholar, the Chandrakirti was a Nalanda scholar. One would think he would say, oh, to all these university graduates, like you guys probably. But he didn't say that. He said, emptiness, Vajracchedika Sutra, like emptiness or the Prajnaparamita, should only be taught to those who, even by mentioning the word non-duality, gives them goosebumps, have tears in their eyes. These guys will then manage to chew. And at a glance, you may think, oh, well, this is like a devotion and blind faith and all of that. But actually, it's not really that. In order to really appreciate the non-duality, you really have to think out of the box. This is why I was saying earlier, Mahayana, forget, it's not just shunyata, even the compassion. Buddhists love to talk about bodhicitta. Buddhists love to talk about love, compassion. But I'm telling you, if people really hear the real, raw, full version of the Mahayana love and compassion, I don't think people will manage to chew it. It's really, they think, they think differently. They think, because I think maybe this might help you. I was talking to just I don't know, a few weeks ago. I mean, in the West, you are quite used to remarks by people like Einstein that time is relative. But people like you and me, even though we have heard time is relative, every time we use the time, we use it as ultimate. You understand what I mean? Like if I say, see you tomorrow, you never think as even relatively, you understand? It's like, oh yeah, tomorrow, the first, 1st of April, right? It has to be fixed. So even in the scientific world, when a great scientist like Einstein said time is relative, and we studied this, we are kind of convinced with that. But in our day-to-day life, we use time as if it is an ultimate. Even if you are 5 minutes late, you get mad. You can miss your flights. You can, you can go bananas by just a minute or two. So now, just with that in your mind, if you are approaching Mahayana studies, they think differently. They really do, supposedly anyway. If they don't think, if the Mahayana people don't think differently, then they're just another theoretician, theistic people who believes in do the right thing, Basically, it's like this, I will tell you. From the Mahayana context, if Prajna, Shila, and Karuna, wisdom, compassion, and the ethic or morality goes for a drive, wisdom should always be the driver. Compassion should sit next to the driver. Ethic, sometimes in the trunk, not even in the back seat. You understand? But nowadays it's not like this. Ethic and morality is the driver. Compassion sort of get to sit at the back seat. Wisdom, not even in the car, left behind. Okay.
Thank you. I guess Tomel is next.
Hello. Thank you, Rinpoche, for speaking. It was a pleasure. This is Goni. I'm Tomer. I'm a student of Aviatar's in the Hebrew University. I wanted to ask about what do you think? I feel like we here in the West, if we can call it the West, or in Israel specifically, we lack of gurus or lamas. It's not something that we are experiencing in our lives, and this whole idea that it seems a little bit far-fetched to us, and especially for somebody who like would like to practice this way, but is lacking of a guru or a lama, and like in a more general way, like there's this kind of a gap between I don't know, the Western kind of general way of thinking and this specific way of thinking. What are your thoughts about that? Or what would you recommend of some kind of a practice, so somebody who doesn't have this access to those teachers?
You know, it took hundreds and hundreds of years to really establish Buddha Dharma outside of India, let's say to China, to Tibet. It's fairly new still. Of course, the time has become different. Things move faster, but doesn't mean that it's always good. What I'm trying to say is that this is why, as Professor Schumann was indicating earlier, I think academic settings like this is important. Buddha himself really encouraged to analyze and be critical towards every teachings, including his. One great thing about academic world, especially in the West, cherishes the critical thinking, and we love, I mean, like I personally would love if students like you guys be critical and analyze Vajracchedika. Because, you know, inside someone like me, I have this confidence you will end up liking this more and more. Because I mean, do you want to be a critical thinker? This is it. This is the real critical thinking. I sometimes joke with many of my Western friends. I say that in the West, there's something called rationalism, right? Rationalism, enlightenment, right? I sometimes joke with them saying that somehow in the West, after the rationalism arrived, they stopped there. They were never critical towards the rational thinking. Because reasoning, rationalism is very blinding. These things that make sense, oh my goodness, you have to be really careful. This is where sutras like Vajracchedika is like piercing, you know, this is really like cutting. It really can. There's so many layers of rug underneath your feet. Now, to answer, I mean, practically, right now, the only I could say is encourage this kind of interaction between professors, students, between visiting teachers. And then, if you really want to embark on the Mahayana journey, let's say, then get out of the box. Really. This would take a bit of a courage. I'm talking about really get rid of a lot of values. Lot of values. And don't kid yourself. Many values we so cling on to. Sometimes I joke with my friends from the West. I sort of, you know, stir a little bit about values such as freedom of speech, democracy. Oh, they look at me as if I'm a communist spy. You know what I mean? They cling so much. But you have to be brave. Until then, You are just a slave of someone else's thinking. Okay.
Okay, we have time at least for another couple questions, I think. And next will be Shlomo, who Rinpoche, you'll be happy to hear that Shlomo guides our meditation group at the university. So it's not just any simple person.
Can you unmute, please?
Shlomo, you're muted.
Oh, now I'm not muted. Hello, Rinpoche. Rinpoche, you know, reading this sutra puts the intellect in a state of shock. It's like, so what do I do now? Yes, I mean, it's like pulling the rug under the intellect feet. There is no logical solution to all of this. So what I'm asking is, would you be so kind? Please give us the practice. You understand? And now, after this intellect was, you know, erased, how do we practice this? What kind of meditation would you recommend if somebody wants to embark specifically after reading this sutra?
Okay. It's a very important question. Actually, your question is not just practical, I mean, for the practice oriented, it's also very academic, I would say. The moment we talk about a practice, we are talking about ignorance. You understand? Ignorance. I mean, since there is an ignorance, therefore you need a remedy to get rid of that. Right? When we are reading the Vajracchedika Sutra, we are only talking about the medicine. We know this is the medicine, but we also know we are ignorant. We need to get used to this. So, okay, there's thousands of things you can do, but one thing that I would highly recommend, and not just me, actually, all the great masters have said this. You should really want this. And I'm serious. Did you hear what I said? You should want this. You should want non-duality. You should want this pulling the rug constantly out, you know, beneath your feet again and again. Call it prayer. Call it supplication. Probably you don't like to, if you're a pure academic, you may not want to use this kind of word. But what I'm saying is basically you need to really want to deconstruct. And that's called right motivation, by the way. As negative as it may sound, because you are seeking for the higher truth. And since you are at the moment, okay, I should finish this, okay. So let's say you are having a nightmare. And even in the middle of the nightmare, someone says, hey, you are having a nightmare. None of this exists. You are just dreaming. It might work if you are what we call disciple of superior faculties. The moment you hear, hey, you are having a nightmare, that's it, end of the story. But you are probably not disciple of superior faculties. You, even after you hear, you are having a nightmare, this is not really true. When the spiders and the elephants and those monsters come to you, the habitual pattern is still there. to be freaking out. So this habit is something that you still need to work. In order to work with a habit, another habit needs to be applied. That's the only way. This is why I was saying, so now you need to apply a new habit of wanting to apply the shunyata, wanting to hear, contemplate, and meditate. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Liat, please go ahead. Yes.
Hello, nice to meet you. I have a little question about the Bodhisattva that if I understood correctly, in order to walk the path of the Bodhisattva, we need to let go of the concept that we need to help other sentient being to get enlightened. Did I got it correct? And
yes.
Is that because in the nature of all sentient being we're all having love, compassion, and equanimity?
Okay, so a bodhisattva is a term used to call somebody, a person who has the bodhicitta or who has taken bodhisattva vow, right?
Mm.
When we talk about a bodhicitta, at least 2 ingredients must. Relative bodhicitta, which is like a love and compassion, and aspiration for all sentient beings' enlightenment, which you just said. I think I didn't hear it all completely. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But equally important, if not more important, is the ultimate bodhicitta. That is like a must. If you are making a coffee, you need water, but you need coffee beans. Without the coffee beans, there is no coffee. Likewise, if you really want to have the bodhicitta, highest level, you need the ultimate bodhicitta. And ultimate bodhicitta, the context of the ultimate bodhicitta is what we have been discussing today, which is taught in the Vajracchedika Sutra. This is why Buddha said, a bodhisattva who wishes to enlighten all sentient beings must not think that there is a sentient being, there's an enlightenment, I'm now liberating them. Because if the bodhisattva thinks that, bodhisattva has a dualistic thinking. There's so many remarks like that. Like in the very similar Prajnaparamita Sutra, Buddha also said, a bodhisattva's compassion is like a mother who has a single child. She dreams that her child is drowned in the river, and she will jump in the river to save, do everything, no hesitation, and may take for hours and hours to rescue the child. But when she's dreaming, when she wake up, there's no child, or there's no drowning. All the effort of saving, rescuing, liberating does not even exist. But I cannot also say it does not exist. It happened, remember, on the dream level. So that's what I was talking about, the paradox. It's there, but it's also not there. I think the last sentence of the Vajracchedika Sutra is kind of important. Like a mirage. It's there, but it's not there. It's not there, but it's there. This is how a bodhisattva should look at our life. So it's not just a negation. It's not just a nihilism. It's in fact free from both extremes. Okay.
Yeah, I think I understand. Is it related? Is it somehow related to the impermanence?
Oh yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay, so I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's take one more question from Avi. Avi, nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't think I have a question. I just want to share my feeling. When you started the meeting, tears came out of my eyes. When I heard the sutra, for me, wisdom, prajna, comes from the heart, doesn't come from the head. And the feeling that raised in me is that I heard it before, and I've just forgotten it, and now I know it again. And I'm reading this sutra that you mentioned, the platform sutra from Huineng, and the feeling is that there's nothing to explain. It's just like this, and tell me, share me from this point, what should be held more, done more.
It reminded me there's actually a question and answer between a master and a student. When one experiences shunyata, even vaguely, how does it feel? Then the master said, it's like a dumb eating sweet. You know it's sweet, but don't know how to say it. Okay. Thank you. That's it, right?
I think that's a pretty good closing note for the day. So thank you very much, Rinpoche, for this beautiful teaching, this beautiful moment. And thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everybody who helped this event, who created the conditions for the event to take place. And I guess we can end with may all sentient beings be happy and peaceful and healthy. And looking forward to seeing you all in future occasions.
Very much, especially looking forward to float on the salt sea.
I'll be happy to take you there.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.